Hello everyone, welcome back and welcome to Introduction to R Part 6, Matrices. Now in the last lesson we learned about what vectors are in the R programming language, which are essentially one-dimensional lists of values of the same atomic data type. Now a matrix is similar to a vector in that it only holds values of the same atomic data type, but instead of only having one dimension, length, matrices have two dimensions. So they have both width and height, essentially rows and columns. So to create a matrix in R, you use the matrix function. So here we are storing a matrix called X. We are assigning it this function call. You use the function matrix. The first argument is data, and that is where you pass in all the values as a vector that you want to turn into the matrix. So here we are passing in a vector of the values 1 through 6. The second argument is n row, which is the number of rows you want the matrix to have. Here we're going to have a matrix with 2 rows, and then n col is the number of columns. So you want 2 rows, 3 columns. And this last argument here, by row equals false, specifies whether you want to fill the matrix values in by row first or by column. So by saying by row equals false, these values from this vector will be filled into the matrix column-wise, which means 1 will go into the first row, first column, 2 will go into the second row, first column, etc. So let's just run this and see what the matrix looks like. So this is the resulting matrix. You can see that the values were filled in columns first. So 1 and 2 are in the first column, 3 and 4 in the second column, 5 and 6 are there. So if we change this value to true, we'll run that again. You can see that the values were now filled in row-wise. So 1, 2, and 3 are now all in the first row, 4, 5, and 6 are all in the second row. Now you can add values to an existing matrix with the rbind and cbind functions. So rbind adds a new row onto an existing matrix. Here we're taking the matrix we created above, and then we are adding this vector to it, 7, 8, 9. So when we do that, a third row will be pasted onto the bottom. And similarly, you can use cbind to add a new column. So here we're making a new matrix, a new 3x2 matrix, and we are adding it to our existing matrix X. So this is going to add 2 new columns to the right of the existing ones. You can see now our matrix is counting all the numbers from 1 to 15. Not all in order, but all those numbers are in there. Now, alternatively to using the matrix function to create a matrix, you can actually just use rbind to bind several different vectors together as the rows of a matrix. So here we're using rbind to take rows, 3 different rows of the same length to create a 3x3 matrix called Z. So this one just counts from 1 to 9 row-wise. Now, you can flip the rows and columns in a matrix using the transpose function. In R, that function is just called T. So that does what's known as the transpose in linear algebra, but I'll run it and we'll see what it does. So we took it basically makes all the rows into columns and all the columns into the rows. So you can see above that like 1, 2, and 7 was the first column, and now below 1, 2, and 7 became the first row. So this was a 3x5 matrix. When you transpose it, the dimensions are reversed, so it becomes a 5x3 matrix after running the transpose. You can also convert an existing matrix into just a one-dimensional vector using the as.vector function and passing the matrix in as the argument. So this will take this whole matrix that has 15 values in it and just make it into a vector with length 15. And when you do this as that vector, it will convert the matrix by column. So the first value of the vector will be 1, then 3, then 5, then 10. If you want to turn a vector into a matrix row-wise, you can do the transpose first. So that's what we're doing here. Run those. You can see that the matrix has been turned into a vector of length 15. And with the transpose, we got the elements in row position row-wise instead of column-wise. Now, similar to vectors, you can use indexing to get values within an existing matrix. But since matrices have 2 dimensions, you need to pass in 2 different index positions to get values that are separated by a comma. The first is the row, and the second is the column. So for example, here we are getting the value from the matrix X at the 3rd row and the 2nd column. We'll check what that was. The 3rd row, 2nd column should be 6 if this is the X matrix anyway. And it was. And if you want to get an entire row or an entire column, you just leave the index position for that column or row blank. So here we're saying from X, we want to get the value at the 3rd row. And by leaving this blank, we're selecting every column. So instead of getting a specific value, we're getting the entire 3rd row by doing this. And similarly, by leaving the row position blank down here, we are grabbing the entire row, or the entire 2nd column, because we didn't specify which rows we wanted, which means we're getting all of the rows for the 2nd column. Now you can take slices of matrices just like we learned with vectors. So here we are taking the matrix X and we're getting the rows from 2 to 5 and the columns from 2 to 3. So this should produce a 2x2 matrix with all the values contained in this part of the bigger matrix. And essentially all the other indexing operations we learned about last time with vectors also work with matrices. It's just a little bit more complicated to get them to work because you have to pass in indices for both rows and columns. So for instance here, we're getting everything in rows 1, 3, and 5, and columns 1 and 3. And similarly, we can do minus signs to remove given rows and columns. So here we are taking the matrix and getting everything other than row 2 and other than column 2. You can also use the logical indexing constructions that we learned about last time. So for instance, here we're going to identify and get every number in the matrix that is an even number. So first we make a logical matrix of the same size as the one that we're using. And to do that, we take X and we do the modulus equal to 0, which basically means if the value in X divided by 2, if the remainder of that operation is 0, which means it's an even number, then return true. So let's run that, and you can see we have a matrix now that's the same size as X, but it's a logical matrix where trues are in the position where the value was even, and falses are in position where the values are odd. So when we take this logical matrix as an index and use it to index into the original matrix X, we'll grab out every single value where the result was true. So this will get all the even values in our matrix. So there they are. And similarly, you can use the in operator to get values that are in a specified vector. So here we're saying we want to get all the values in X that are contained within this vector, and everything else will be gotten rid of. You can give matrices named dimensions instead of just having them be unnamed. So to do that, when you use the matrix constructor here, you pass in an extra argument called dim names, and then you provide lists of the dimension names that you want. We will go into more about what lists are in the next lesson. So here we're passing in a list with the names R1 and R2 for the first and second rows, and C1 and C2 for the first and second columns. Let's run that. You can see that now the columns have these names we provided, and the rows do as well. You can reassign or create dimension names after the matrix has already been made by using this dim names function. So to do that, you use dim names on the matrix, and then you assign those dim names whatever the dimension names you want. So we're assigning a list that has the rows and the columns. So if you run that, these will be renamed to first C, second C, first R, second R. And after you have named dimensions on a matrix, you can use those named dimensions to index into it and grab values instead of using numerical indexing. So here we're just getting the value at row 2, column 2 using our normal numerical indexing. But now that they have column names, we could pass in the string second row, second column instead, and these will both get the same value. Now there are a variety of matrix operations available in the R programming language. So we'll start off by making two new identical matrices here, X and Y, with these values. And first we will use the dim function to check the dimensions of these matrices we're making. So you can see that we created a 3x3 matrix. So the dim function shows 3, 3. That means it has 3 rows and 3 columns. Now, similar to vectors, when you use basic math operators on matrices, they perform their function in an element-wise fashion. So if we add X and Y, which are the same matrix, this matrix here, every element at each position will be added to itself and returned in a new 3x3 matrix. So in the first position, 1 will be added to 1 and returned, 2 will be added to 2 here and returned, etc. The same goes for multiplication. It's done element-wise. So if you want to perform true matrix multiplication, similar to the dot product with vectors, you have to use this construction where you put the multiplication symbol inside of these two percentage signs, and when you do that, you will perform true matrix multiply instead of the element-wise multiply. So that's the result there. And just to go over a few other potentially useful matrix functions, the function diag will get all the elements on the main diagonal of the matrix. So that's the elements starting in the first row, first column, and then going down diagonally from there. So in this case, it would get 2, 7, and 12. But that's the result of a calculation, so the numbers here will be a little bit different for that. Now, sum used on a matrix will add up every single value in the whole matrix and give you the result. Min used on a matrix will get the smallest value in the entire matrix. Max used on the matrix will get the largest value. And mean averages every single value in the whole matrix. Now, there are a few different functions built in that can get you totals for rows and columns, or averages across rows and columns. Those are row sums, that will get you the total of each row, col sums, that will get you the total for each column, Row means gets you the average or mean for each row, and col means gets you the average for each column. So those can be quick and easy ways to do some aggregations along different dimensions of a matrix. Run those. Now, it is possible to make data structures that are larger in dimension than 2 by 2, like a matrix, or like data frames that we'll learn about later. These are generally not used that much for data analysis and predictive modeling. They can come into play under the hood when using certain packages, perhaps for doing neural networks, but it's generally not something you're going to have to do too much yourself. But if you need to use data structures that are bigger than 2 by 2, you can do that with the array function. So here we are creating an array out of 8 values that has 3 dimensions. So it's 2 by 2 by 2. And when we run that, we actually end up with a data structure that has 2 matrices that are each 2 by 2 nested inside this third dimension. So we're not going to go any further into arrays, but just know that it is possible to create data structures that have more than 2 dimensions if that is something you need to do. So that covers all the basics of matrices that we're going to need to know, but one of the main limitations of matrices is that they only can contain data of the same basic type. And when you're working with real-world data, you're usually going to have data of many different types. Like you might be loading in a table that has some numbers and some character strings and maybe even some dates and things like this. And matrices are not able to deal with those. So next time we will learn about a new data structure called lists, which are able to contain data of many different types. So stay tuned.